Life hadn't been particularly generous to Arthur Miller. In his mid-40s, his shoulders slumped and dark circles framed his eyes. He was the janitor at a prestigious but ancient private high school, whose very walls seemed to whisper age-old secrets. He felt invisible among the wealthy children who ran through the gleaming corridors, laughing with their latest model phones. Every day waiting inside him grew heavier, like a rusted medallion hanging around his neck. Divorced, struggling to pay alimony, his dreams long since incinerated in the school's boiler room. He was a man burnt out. His only wish was for a little comfort, to have just a little bit more. Over time, the school stood in one of London's old, noble districts, shadowed by enormous pine trees. It was a historic mansion, once belonging to a Levantine family. But the most talked about part was the old wine cellar in the basement, kept locked for years. Rumor had it that the mansion's first owner had acquired his wealth through dark means, even burying part of his fortune in this cellar and making a pact with an uncanny entity to protect it. Of course, these were just tales students told to scare each other, or so Arthur hoped. One winter evening, the school principal, Mr. Harris, called Arthur into his office. "We're turning it into an archive room. Here are the keys, but be careful. It hasn't been opened in years. We don't know what you might find down there." Arthur felt a shiver run down his spine as he looked at the rusty large keys thrust into his hand. The stories he'd heard for years came flooding back. But at the same time, a spark of curiosity and perhaps hope ignited within him. Maybe the tales were true. Maybe that cellar held the key to his misery. The cellar door opened with a groaning shriek. A heavy, musty, and earthy smell wafted out. The beam of his flashlight illuminated cobweb-covered, empty wine racks and old furniture scattered across the floor. It was a place where time seemed to have frozen. As Arthur looked around, he noticed a stone block in the far corner, different from the others, carved with strange symbols. They were unsettling symbols, looking as though they'd leapt straight out of dark drawings. Though he hesitated for a moment, the voice inside him urged him on. He started prying at the stone with the crowbar in his hand. The stone moved with unexpected ease, revealing a dark void beneath it. Inside the void lay a small, velvet-covered wooden box. Arthur's heart pounded. He carefully picked up the box, blew off the dust, and opened the lid. Inside lay a handful of gold coins, their gleam dazzling, and beneath them a rusted medallion made of blackened silver, bearing the same strange symbols. In the center of the medallion, a red, ruby-like stone glowed. Arthur had never seen so much gold in his life. His eyes widened. This was beyond his wildest dreams. This was his salvation. Just then he felt an icy breath on the back of his neck. He spun around, but no one was there. He only heard an incomprehensible whisper coming from the depths of the cellar. It was as if someone, like those uncanny beings from hell, was calling to him from the darkness. "Yours. It's all yours. But there's a price." Arthur flinched in fear, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from the gold. Greed had overwhelmed his fear. "What price?" he whispered into the darkness. The whisper came back, clearer this time, as if speaking directly into his mind. "More. Always more." Arthur snatched the box and bolted from the cellar. He couldn't sleep that night. Tossing and turning in his bed, the medallion he held seemed to grow warmer, burning his palm. The whispers continued. They promised him wealth, power, asking only for loyalty and greed in return. The next day, when Arthur exchanged a few coins, his life began to change. He paid off his debts, bought new clothes, even looked at a small car. But it wasn't enough. The whispers were right. He wanted more. He wore the medallion around his neck and never took it off. But along with the medallion, strange things began to happen. Walking down the corridors, he sometimes saw the students' faces momentarily twist into horrifying, grotesque masks. They looked like tormented, mocking, decaying faces, torn from Galiptican's sketchbook, staring at him. The walls seemed to breathe. Shadows elongated, and unfamiliar shapes flickered and vanished in the corners. The school's boiler room started to look like a corner of hell. The sounds from the pipes transformed into the moans of suffering souls. The whispers were more insistent now. They told him to take other valuable items from the school, the phones and wallets the rich kids forgot. "They don't deserve it," the voice said. "It should all be yours. You deserve more." Arthur tried to resist at first, but the weight of the medallion on his neck, the allure of the whispers, and the insatiable hunger within him were taking over. He started small, a pen, a book, then a wallet, a tablet computer. With every stolen item, the red stone on the medallion glowed brighter, and Arthur felt more powerful. But at the same time, his grip on reality was loosening. He started staying at the school at night, going down to the cellar to talk to his treasure. He would laugh to himself, shout at shadows, try to decipher the symbols on the walls. Other staff members and teachers began to worry about Arthur's strange behavior. They whispered about him, avoided him. One night, while Arthur was in the cellar again, John, the night watchman, heard the noises and came down. "Arthur, you okay? What are you doing down here?" he asked, shining his flashlight on him. In the flashlight's beam, Arthur looked like a monster. His eyes were bulging, his face slick with sweat, his hair disheveled. He was holding a crowbar, sitting atop a pile of stolen goods. "Get out of here," he screamed. "This is mine. It's all mine. You can't touch it." John realized Arthur had gone mad. He tried to calm him down. "Arthur, put down the crowbar. Come on, let's go upstairs. You need to get some." But Arthur wasn't listening. The whispers echoed in his ears. "He'll stop you. He'll take your treasure. Don't let him." With crazed eyes, he swung the crowbar and lunged at John. What happened next was a blur in Arthur's mind. Screams, a struggle, and then silence. When Arthur came to, he was in the schoolyard. His clothes were torn, his hands covered in blood. He couldn't quite remember what had happened, but the medallion around his neck felt hotter and heavier than ever, and the stone in its center glowed blood red, as if it were alive. When the police arrived, they found Arthur in the cellar, muttering nonsensically beside John's unconscious body. "The gold, it's all mine. It wanted it." Arthur Miller was charged with theft and assault, but his bizarre behavior during the trial, his disjointed speech, and his constant references to whispers, and the medallion, led his lawyer to argue insanity. Following examinations, Arthur was diagnosed with acute paranoid schizophrenia and committed to a high-security mental hospital. Our story doesn't end here, because for Arthur Miller, the real nightmare was just beginning. They put him in a padded, stark white room. He wore only a white gown. The medallion, the gold coins, everything had been taken away. But for Arthur, nothing had changed, because the medallion was now a part of his soul. The whispers no longer came from outside, but from within his own brain, and that stark white, empty room. To Arthur, it was lined with gold. When he opened his eyes, he saw the walls, the ceiling, the floor, all covered in dazzling gold. He tried to scrape it off with his fingernails, screaming, Mine! It's all mine! He scratched until his fingers bled, until his nails broke. But the gold was still there, glittering, mocking him. Sometimes he saw a tall, thin, shadowy figure emerge in the corner of the room like something out of nightmares. It was the guardian of the medallion, the djinn of the treasure, greed itself. It would look at him and laugh silently. The nurses and doctors were used to Arthur's episodes. They gave him sedatives, strapped him to his bed. But no medicine could quell the hell in Arthur's mind. He was paying the price for his greed. He was condemned to an eternal madness in a cell he himself had created. A cell lined with gold, but in reality, utterly empty and white. At night, in the silent corridors of the hospital, you could hear the sound of fingernails scratching padded walls coming from room 13, and a pained whisper. More. Always more. Arthur Miller had wanted everything. Now the only thing he had was an infinite madness, echoing his own greed. The rusted medallion had given him everything it promised, and in return, it had taken his soul. And that was a debt he could never repay.